Well, since some of you are new, I thought I would just tell you a little bit about MIC just for a couple of minutes before we introduce our speakers. And for those of you who've been with MIC for a long time, it'd just be a nice review. Marin Interfaith Council was founded in 1982, so 41 years now, as a respectful collaborative with a threefold mission: celebrate faith, advocate justice, build community. You're doing all three today just by being here with us. We seek to be a place of belonging and understanding where hearts and minds can change, connect, and collaborate so that all may experience radical inclusion and so that all may thrive. Some examples include our gatherings every first, second, and third Wednesday of the month, which includes 2 monthly meditations, and our program called Getting to Know Your Neighbor's Faith, Ask Me Anything, where each month you can bring to a religious leader all your questions about their faith tradition. We also have gatherings for religious leaders, an annual fall event highlighting visionary work in our county, and ongoing small groups, including 2 focused on addressing climate change. Our network of accompaniment congregations provides tangible support to immigrant families, refugees, and asylum seekers. And our justice work also includes being part of the Marin Organizing Committee, and we're the fiscal sponsor for the Street Chaplaincy and their wonderful mission to provide compassionate spiritual care to the unhoused. These are just a few examples of MIC's mission to create a place of belonging. And by joining us today, you're part of that mission. You are the Marin Interfaith Council. So thank you, Marin Interfaith Council, for being here today. So the best way to stay involved and find out about these things and many more is through our twice monthly e-newsletter. If you're not already signed up for it, there's a sign-up sheet on your table. Together, let's make this a community, a world where everyone thrives and is welcome, a place of love and justice and equity that celebrates diversity in all its forms and belonging. That's the spirit in which we gather today. And in that spirit, we now turn to our 3 speakers to hear 3 different perspectives. I invite you to open your hearts and minds, that as you listen, you receive what is familiar and comforting, and to hold with gentle openness what is new or unfamiliar, or that you might not agree with. That's why we're here, to listen to each other with deep respect, to learn something new, to expand our capacity for welcome and understanding. And if anything you hear today leads to a little tightness in your chest or stomach, that's normal. It's our human way of dealing with the unfamiliar. Just allow it to be. Simply breathe. Notice it. Be kind to yourself and each other as we hold everything today with compassion and openness. So today we're very blessed to hear from 3 faith leaders: Cantor Naomi Weiss from Congregation called Shofar, Reverend C.J. Dunford from the Buddhist Temple of Marin, and Reverend Dr. Janie Spahr of the Spahr Center. I'll introduce each speaker and I'll act as timekeeper, so they don't need to worry about that and we don't either. Everybody can just relax. Enjoy these 3 leaders from our community. So we begin with Cantor Naomi Weiss, who currently serves right here at Congregation called Shofar in Tiburon. She recently completed the cantorial internship program to be a Hazan under the mentorship of Hazanim, Alberto Mizrahi and Sarah Alexander. She has extensive experience as ritual director in conservative synagogues, 4 years at Congregation Beth Shalom in Northbrook, Illinois, followed by 5 years at Chicago's Anshe Emet Synagogue, where she won the Sisterhood's Women of Achievement Award. Prior to that, she worked for 7 years as a freelance cantorial soloist, leading services and tutoring B'nai Mitzvah students in the greater Chicago area, most notably at Beth Emet, the Free Synagogue, Anshe Emet Synagogue, Chicago Sinai, and Temple Shalom. Please welcome Cantor Naomi Weiss.
So you have a little piece of paper on your table with the words to this song, which we'll open with. It's very repetitive, and you can just hum. Olam chesed yibaneh la 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 la. Olam chaser yibane, la 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 la. Olam chaser yibane, la la la. I will build this world from love. La 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 la. You must build this world from love. La la la. This world from love, la 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 la. Then God will build this world from love, la 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 la. So, good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak today and share this morning with you. I guess the instructions were to talk a little bit about our journeys, how we got where we are, and why we do what we do. So, watching the clock. My journey actually started in San Jose, in the denominations of Judaism. We were in the conservative movement, but my family was becoming more and more observant and moving more and more towards an Orthodox lifestyle. And my parents looked around Northern California and said, we need to leave and go and find more Orthodox Jews. So we moved to Silver Spring, Maryland, where there's a very intense Orthodox community, and just got right in there. I was in the middle of the 6th grade. If you have a 6th grader, don't move in the middle of the school year. Not a good idea. Or maybe your, child will become a cantor or a minister, from all the, horrific experiences that happen when you move across country in the middle of the 6th grade. So we moved into this Orthodox community, and I went into a very Orthodox parochial school where I was bullied every single day of 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And bullying in the 70s was like not a big deal. So it was a rough time, and I was a socially awkward kid without the skills to manage that and to understand. And I love how fitting it is that the theme today is We All Belong, because really I never felt like I fit in anywhere. With that, I went to college, went to UCLA, and fell away from Jewish life completely. Just nothing. I was in a band with my ex-partner. I had dreams of being in a band. We had this great musical project, and that was my life of rebellion away from all the stuff. And then after almost 20 years with this person, we split. And I had, of course, the thing that comes to me is I had no musical outlet. But being raised a girl in an Orthodox community, girls were not allowed to lead worship services or read from the Torah ritually in front of the community or even sing in public. So as I started exploring my Jewish roots again and sort of bouncing from synagogue to synagogue, looking for a social network and looking for a Jewish life, I thought, hey, girls lead services and read Torah, and that's all like a musical thing. So that would be fun. That would be a way I can sing. So I started teaching myself how to do these things, and I had a good foundation because Orthodox day school gives you good foundation in all that stuff. But then I went to a retreat just after I started thinking I was going to move in this direction, and a rabbi looked at me and said, over a campfire, and said, "Why are you not a cantor?" I was 38 years old, I think, maybe 37, 38, and I was like, oh, it never occurred to me, and I filed his enthusiastic suggestion away for later consideration. And then I was working at the Los Angeles County Museum at the time. I'd been there for 10 years. I got laid off 2 months later. Ta-da! God was saying, hey, maybe you should consider that. I was 36, I guess I was 36 years old, living with my parents, and thinking maybe I should think about this. I have a roof over my head, thank God, and because my parents had moved to Los Angeles. It's a little, with Palo Alto in the middle. But what's interesting is these early experiences that I had, that, the bullying and the having to deal with that, actually helped really form my beliefs about what Judaism is, because I was the kid who drank the Kool-Aid. I actually believed all the stuff, literally, what we were reading in the Torah, what we were reading in the prayer books, as literal truth. And as I started to sort of evolve my theology, it was like, well, maybe it's not literal truth. Maybe, we all have this idea of God. Every faith tradition is reaching for the same God and reaching for connection with the same God. And we all have our stories and our rituals and our beliefs and the ways we can get there, and what works for us and what resonates with us. And I feel lucky that I was actually born into the faith tradition that works for me. And I love our rituals, and I love our texts, and I love our musical traditions. Although I've sung in many church choirs and love that, and did for many years. But I've really come to really love our music. And I thought, well, maybe I will study to be a cantor. And I got into it because I loved singing. Cantors sing. But as I started doing the work, where you're tutoring B'nai Mitzvah, the bar and bat mitzvah kids, and they're 12 years old, which is right when my trauma happened. So, and we all know how horrible it is to be 12 years old. Like, we all remember that. I certainly never forgot. So I work one-on-one with 12-year-olds every day, and I get to be the teacher that I didn't have, and I get to be that safe adult that I didn't have. And to me, that's probably the most rewarding thing right there, is using our traditions and ritual skills that we teach these children. Again, back to the theme of we all belong. In every faith tradition, there are ritual skills. We all have rituals. We all have things that our faith tradition does, and you practice them, and you learn how to practice them, and you get comfortable with them, so that when you can go to your church or your synagogue or any place of faith community, if you know the rituals of your faith community, you feel like you belong. And you can fall away. Maybe you do the stuff that your parents made you do as a child, and then you don't go back to your Buddhist temple or your mosque or your church or your synagogue after that, confirmation or bar bat mitzvah or whatever, the things that you teach your children. But when you come back, and often you do, I think, we all go through life, and then stuff happens, and you start searching for a place you belong and a place that you feel safe with your people. And you have the skills. That's why we teach our children the ritual skills. So I feel like that's some of the most gratifying work for me. And I also get to now be a leader in a community where I can create a warm and welcoming and inclusive community and be a safe space for people. So it's very rewarding. And we're going to end on that song. I'm going to keep it short. I'm going to sing it again. Now you know the song. We can sing it together. Olam chesed yibaneh, la 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 la. Olam chesed yibaneh, la 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 la.
Thank you, Cantor Weiss. Our next speaker is Reverend C.J. Dunford. Originally from rural southwestern Virginia, Reverend C.J. has lived in the California Bay Area for most of their adult life. They grew up in a very politically and religiously conservative family and Christian church, which made it difficult to reconcile their gender and sexuality with their faith. So they left the church at 18. Several years later, they transitioned to Jodo Shinshu Buddhism after finding their home temple in Berkeley, where they flourished in the affirming and inclusive Sangha of Berkeley Buddhist Temple. With a focus on the role of religion and spirituality as a force of colonization, oppression, and racialization, and its equal potential for creating supportive, loving community and collective and personal liberation, Reverend C.J. works to develop understandings of the intersectional nature of individual and communal identities, with an emphasis on queer and trans perspectives, both in their academic work and in their ministry. Please welcome Reverend C.J. Dunford.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you all for coming to listen to us all talk today. As Scott mentioned, I am assisting minister at the Buddhist Temple of Marin, and I'm also the assisting minister at the Berkeley Buddhist Temple. Today, I'd like to share a little bit about my lineage of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism and a little bit about my life. I'd like to start by reading a passage from our founder, Venerable Shinran, who lived in the 12th and 13th centuries in Japan. Dharmakara Bodhisattva, during the causal state, being in the presence of Buddha Lokeshvara Raja and having examined the causes of the Buddha's pure lands, and the good and evil of those Buddha lands and of the heavenly and human realms, established the highest, most excellent vow, and brought forth the great universal vow. After contemplating for 5 kalpas, chose the best of them, again vowed that the name Amida would be heard in the 10 quarters. Namo Amida Butsu. This passage comes from the beginning of the Shoshinge, which I translate as verses in praise of the true faith. The Shoshinge is one of the most important liturgical pieces in Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. And in these particular verses, the founder of our lineage, Venerable Shinran, describes the origin narrative of the Buddha Amida. This story comes from the larger sutra on the Buddha of Immeasurable Life, where a royal encounters Lokeshvara Raja Buddha and decides to forsake regal life to pursue Buddhahood, becoming a monk and taking up the name Dharmakara. According to the larger sutra, Dharmakara practices austerities and evaluated the attributes of the Buddha's lands, the heavenly realms, and the human realms over the course of 5 kalpas in order to create a perfect realm where all beings could be born in order to attain nirvana, becoming one with Buddha. Now, a kalpa is estimated to be 4.3 billion years. So that's 21.5 billion years of careful evaluation and practice. By contrast, the Earth is approximately 4.6 billion years old. And the age of the universe is estimated to be 13.8 billion years old. Thinking in these terms, the practice of Bodhisattva Dharmakara, or similarly the virtues, insight and understanding of Amida Buddha, extends beyond the origins of the universe. Something that I've noticed for myself and a lot of other people in the world today is that we tend to hold logic, science, and reason as paramount points of guidance in our lives. That makes sense for me personally because I'm classically trained as a scientist. I studied geology both in undergrad and in graduate school at San Francisco State. However, I'm not a professional geologist. And while an analytical mind can be very helpful, I've learned that it's just as important to live in my abstract and conceptual mind, especially when it comes to thinking about Buddhism, because there are many interesting balances of logic, metaphysics, and magic in Buddhism. Maybe many of us have been convinced in so many ways to think about the world in a very logical and dispassionate or objective way. It's part of the dominant culture in which we're living. It's a common myth that Buddhism is quite simply logical and devoid of anything that doesn't fit into the scientific method. That Buddhism is philosophy rather than religion. However, today, I would like to encourage us all to examine that story of Bodhisattva Dharmakara in the light of a healthy balance between logical analysis along with a sense of imaginative wonder at what the world is and what it might be. I'm talking about this story. I will use the names Dharmakara and Amida interchangeably. And the reason I want to discuss them is because this is the story that is foundational to Jodo Shinshu Buddhism and Pure Land Buddhism. And contained within that story is a powerful narrative in how we might understand and affect movements for change and mutual care and equity in the world. I've noticed in my time at the Pacific School of Religion, where I'm working on my doctorate of ministry, the school is, at its heart, a Christian school working to be more ecumenical and inclusive of many traditions. Many of my classmates have unique and personal approaches to their mostly Christian faiths. Some folks know a little bit about Buddhism, and some know a little bit more than that, but I keep bumping into the idea that I can somehow simply talk about Buddhism and simplify Buddhism in a few sentences. 2.5 millennia of history, doctrinal evolution, in just a couple of sentences to my Christian friends. In having conversations with these friends in school and also with my friends in my Sangha, I've come to realize that my own experience and conceptions of Buddhist teachings are very mystical in and of themselves. I find this to be a helpful approach to counteract the assumption that Buddhism is a simply logical and philosophical way of living our lives. For myself, I tend to lean into the mystical stories of Buddhism, like the one of Bodhisattva Dharmakara, who over the course of billions of years, over many lifetimes, cultivated a connection to nirvana so profound that they were able to distill nirvana into the perfect land of awakening, the pure land of Sukhavati. The Sanskrit word Sukhavati means blissful abode. And in the story of Amida Buddha, this realm was created to be a place of perfection, where beings would be born so that they could live in ease and cultivate the same virtues that Dharmakara did, and quickly attain liberation together. This is a mystical story that holds a lot of hope and wisdom for the trying times in which we are living. With blatant fascism and state violence on the rise, and where already marginalized people continue to see our rights, our protections, and our safety eroded. It is important for us to look beyond the historicity of Bodhisattva Dharmakara and Amida Buddha. I'm often asked the question, was Dharmakara a real person who became the Buddha Amida? This question holds a lot of assumptions about how the world works and challenges the Buddhist concept of transmigration and time. People often want a non-fictional, historical person who discovered something profound about life, someone we can touch, so to speak. That person is Shakyamuni Buddha, the once Prince Siddhartha Gautama of northern India, with whom many of you are probably familiar. The myth of Dharmakara and Amida are distinct from the story of Shakyamuni Buddha because that story is outside the realm of our comprehension of time and space. And we have to learn to let go of the notion of linear time and the essentialism of our human experience. This unrepeatable life that we've been given is very important. It is our chance to become kinder and more loving people. And it is also but one moment, a blink of an eye, in the grand cyclical story of the cosmos. These ideas might seem opposed, but they're tied together. Just like Bodhisattva Dharmakara cultivated the roots of good and took billions of years to create the land of bliss, our lives are a slow and daily practice of growth and becoming our authentic selves. There's a unity in each waking moment, in every decision that we make, and the much longer narrative of our lives. Each day when we wake up, there are many things that we can choose to do and not to do, who to be and who not to be. Similarly, in each moment of our lives throughout the day, there are branching realities that we create through our decisions and also the path which has been laid before us due to the karmic circumstances of our lives. Each of those moments is one for us to learn and grow, so held within each passing second is the hope for liberation and awakening to the reality of our world. This is all to say that each moment of our lives is one of practice, of cultivation, and of creating the future by sowing the seeds of our karmic activity in the choices that we do and do not make. In a sense, the myth of Bodhisattva Dharmakara and Amida Buddha is one that we might look to for guidance on how we choose to live in a world of pain and suffering. In Jodo Shinshu Buddhism, we express our gratitude and reliance on this story of Amida by saying Namo Amida Butsu. Perhaps a mystical approach to this practice of reciting the name would be to take the story of Bodhisattva Dharmakara, every day we are alive. When we say Namo Amida Butsu, we might ask ourselves many questions. Do I understand what true love is? What compassion is? Namo Amida Butsu. Do my thoughts and actions align with that true love and compassion, with the creative activity of liberation for all beings? Not just the liberation of other people, and not just for the liberation of myself. Namo Amida Butsu. What do freedom and liberation mean, especially in our world defiled with discrimination, violence, and domination? Namo Amida Butsu. In the billions of years, the timelessness of the working of enlightenment, what does this current moment of my life mean? Namo Amida Butsu. This tiny moment may seem terribly important or altogether insignificant, and it may be both at once. Namo Amida Butsu. What does the Pure Land look like, and what would it feel like? How would it feel to be born there? Namo Amida Butsu. Is it possible to find the Pure Land here in this world of suffering? Does it feel far away, like a wistful dream? Namo Amida Butsu. What must be done to cultivate attributes of the Pure Land of equality, of bliss, the Pure Land of non-discrimination and ultimate freedom, the powerful imaginary, in this life and this world in which we are living? Namo Amida Butsu. As a queer, transgender, non-binary person, I often think of the moments that brought me the rights and freedoms, precarious as they may be today. The fight for the LGBTQIA rights did not start with a joyful rainbow celebration of queer and trans identities. It was a riotous and violent rebellion against brutal policing led by transgender women of color. Over the years, oligarchical capitalism in America have turned pride into a corporate-sponsored spectacle with troves of rainbow-slathered merchandise. And while it's exciting for us to be able to celebrate our authentic selves, the past couple of years have been among the most contentiously backward-moving ones for queer and trans rights in the United States. Each year that I learn that this year is the deadliest year on record for transgender people, over and over and over again, especially trans women of color. Queer and trans children and even their caretakers are under systematic attack by legislatures across the country. I have to say that my sense of pride in my identity feels uncertain. I just feel scared, angry, and exhausted. I've been assured by elders that things have gotten better for me and my community, but honestly, better is not enough. I'm a survivor of emotional abuse, assault, physical and sexual violence, because of who I am and who I love, and I'll carry that trauma with me for the rest of my life. Indeed, the first occurrences of such violence were first enacted on me in the church and in the family in which I grew up. I'm truly tired of living in a world where that sort of traumatic violence is considered to be normal, is considered to be better than yesterday. I'm tired of cisgender and heterosexual people telling me that things are better than they used to be. That quite simply is not enough for me and my siblings. Perhaps we might feel like these problems don't exist in our places of worship. Maybe we hang a rainbow flag at the entrance to pretend like everything's okay. But I'm here to tell you that no matter how welcoming, no matter how safe we think our churches, our temples, our mosques, and synagogues are, that's never enough. I want to embrace the story of Amida Buddha, to work toward a world of equality. And I wonder if, in the 5 kalpas of cultivation, Dharmakara ever felt tired, scared, and angry like I do now. Like my Black friends and family, when they lose another loved one or hear about yet another extrajudicial execution by the police. Like many Asian American and Pacific Islander friends and family feel when they experience or hear about another act of anti-Asian violence. Though it's hard and some days feel hopeless, I continue to return to the notion of practice over the long run. That building an equitable society requires a daily practice of self-reflection and love, of recognizing the problems that exist in the world and within myself. Understanding that there is always more work to do. The violence, the hatred, the injustice grounded in discrimination. It takes a conscious decision every day to imagine that world of equality. And it takes daily practice from moment to moment to root out that discrimination within myself and to encourage all of us to eliminate that evil in our hearts. Dharmakara's primal vow in the larger sutra states, if, when I attain Buddhahood, the sentient beings of the 10 quarters who, with sincere and entrusting heart, aspire to be born in my land and say my name even 10 times, should not be born in my pure land, may I not attain perfect enlightenment. The becoming of a Buddha for Bodhisattva Dharmakara and my own enlightenment, my own awakening, my own liberation are tied as one. I want to be born in a land of equality where we all feel safe, valued, and respected. To love and feel love and not worry about race, gender, sexuality, ability, and so many other attributes that are judged as barriers to that love in this world of pain and suffering. Just as Bodhisattva Dharmakara spent 5 kalpas evaluating the good and evil in the world, and then rooting out that evil within their own heart, so too must we all take up this daily task. It's tempting to stop and think, oh, well, things are better now than they were, so maybe that's good enough. But that's not good enough, and we cannot give in to complacency. I see Amida Buddha as my own personal aspiration. I want to create a world of non-discrimination and equality here and now. And I hope that we can all take up this daily practice and labor together in love to build this kind of world. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Reverend CJ. Our final speaker today is Reverend Dr. Janie Spahr, who was ordained a Presbyterian minister in 1974 and received her doctorate of ministry in 1987. With friends, she founded the LGBTQ Center in Marin and the Marin AIDS Project, which combined in 2015 to form the Spahr Center. She was denied her call as co-pastor of a church in New York because she was an out lesbian and became then an evangelist for the organization that all may freely serve, and traveled the country for 16 years to help educate, open hearts and minds, and promote inclusion. In 2017, Janie and co-founder Jordan Decker created Trans Heartline, a safe house where transgender people following their affirmation surgeries can find a welcoming space for healing. Please provide a warm welcome for Dr. Janie Spahr.
Howdy do, howdy do. Do we love these two people? Yes. Thank you. Wow. I want to say first just to the Marin Interfaith Council, because I haven't really said this before. I was here 40 years ago when you started, because I'm old. And it was not popular to be LGBT anything. And I remember walking into the room, and I can tell you, everybody that was in the room, because this is what they did, they welcomed me. And they made me feel safe. So this, for 40 years, has been a place for those of us, when it wasn't popular to be gay, who loved us and said welcome and meant it. So I just want to thank you first. I've wanted to thank you for a long time. Now, preparing for you, because I've known you for such a long time, and you know a lot of my story, but there's things that I've kind of, because when you get to be 80, you get to say anything. And you get to think about, and you get to reflect, and I'm so grateful that I'm this old because I've been able to reflect. And so to be able to reflect, there are some things that I have learned. I have learned this. I was born with someone. I am an identical twin. And what they used to say to my father, do you only have two girls? And he would say, have you met them yet? So this is the thing. When you are born with someone and in your mother's womb, you communicate. You communicate this amazing communication that happens so that when you're born, you are already born with someone who loves you and cherishes you, and you love and cherish them. So you come into the world with this. Martin Buber said, every particular I-thou relationship is a glimpse into the eternal thou. That's it. Then, another friend of mine, a wonderful Catholic priest, said to me, Janie, God is that which happens between you and me. Yeah, I know it. I know it. I feel it. I was born into it. And so it was very easy for me to step into this universal love. Whether you call it God or goddess, however you call it, it's this thing of loving kindness that is just incredible. So I was born into it. So I thought everybody knew this. Because that's your context. You were born with somebody who loved you and knew you. So it was like, okay, so we know this, and let's go into the world and so on. So my father and mother taught us this wonderful saying, treat every human heart as though it were wounded, because it probably is. And my daddy would say to us, you say hello to everybody you meet, because you never know that they might not have heard that from anybody. And don't be afraid of it. Just say hello. Meet people where they are. So coming into that, I was like, this world is fabulous. And so I feel people in my whole body. And there's some people that just make you gleeful. It's like that Rabbi Stacy, and if you know her, this kind of thing. You walk in and you don't have to say anything. You go, whoa. Or Kathy right out there, you just go, whoa. because there's something so beautiful about knowing the holy so that it's for everybody and access to everybody. So they wanted me to talk a little bit about Jesus, come from the Christian perspective for a moment. This is what I know. This is a person who challenged the disparity between the rich and the poor. 362 verses on economic injustice in the Bible. That was his main thing. Discipleship of equals, said men and women are to be equal when it wasn't so, and now non-binary and queer, because I think everybody's queer. It's the thing of challenging every domination system where there is not justice. I learned from Jesus that love without justice is no justice at all. It's no love at all. Love without justice is no love at all. I learned that if I'm not out there doing justice, then I'm not doing the work. And it was this work that he did in loving people into who they might dare to be. And so that's our work all the time. So those are the things I take away from him. So how do I know this? How do I know this universal love? Because I knew it with Janie and then more and more people. So when I was 14 years old, don't you love that with an 80-year-old? When I was 14, don't worry, it gets better. When I was 14, I kissed a girl. Thank you. And I knew it was not the same as kissing a boy. And you know what? It was the most fabulous thing. So I talked to God all the time, so I'd say, like, God, you really did something fabulous here. Now, I'm telling you the truth. But what happened is I went with a friend of mine into a cafe, and there were two women that were sitting there, and I could feel what they were feeling. It was like, wow, that is beautiful. This friend of mine came up behind me and she said, Janie, you see those two women over there? I said, yes. She said, those two women are bad, and they're dirty, and they're an abomination to God. It took me 20 years to take that out of my being and know what I knew the first time I kissed a girl, that it was a holy thing. 20 years. So, there are people who love you into being yourself. And my former husband, Jimmy, loved me into loving me, and two little boys, Jimmy and Chetty, that are now 52 and 54. And when you have that, just like you have a twin, it's like you can feel something wonderful happening. So I have in my safety deposit box a letter that my former husband, Jimmy, wrote to me. And I have it for my children. And it says essentially this: I wish it was me, but I want you to be you more. And so I have that. I have a whole family behind me so that when I came out as a lesbian, it was like, look out! Because this is so much fun, and people are feeling bad for you. You know, that's the thing. People feel bad for you. You're like, honey, you should only know how great this is. So one of the things is, we went across the country. When the church said no, then this wonderful church in downtown Rochester said to me, they said, well, then we're going to send you out. So they made me an evangelist. Can you believe sitting on a plane with someone, you know, and they're telling their whole life, you know? And then they say, what do? And you say, I'm a lesbian evangelist. You know, it's true. And they get very quiet. So the thing is, so I got a chance to go out. You know, Jesus said go out by 2 by 2. Hell, we went out 4 by 4. And there we went. We would go out and all these places. And you know what? You always had a grandmother saying, I've been waiting for you to come because I have a lesbian daughter or I have a gay son. And now they're saying in the churches, I have a transgender grandson. Help me understand this. So, God just keeps inviting us to stretch, even though we don't want to. Makes us cranky, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. So out across the country and meeting LGBT people too who didn't like who they were because nobody ever told them they were good. And while we told them they were not only good, but they were fabulous. And this is our work all the time, whatever it is. So the first church, stay with me, the first church that I ever went into, there are 362 churches in 360 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's a Presbyterian center. So the thing is, there are only two, when I was only two half-time women. Imagine this in these churches. This was 1974. So this neighbor called me and said, friends of my parents, and said, now listen, don't tell your mother and dad, but there's this job by a steel mill called in Hazelwood near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I think you ought to apply for it. I'm like, yeah, okay. So this is what happened when I applied. I walked in the session. The session was made of 4 people over 80, white, 1 woman 64, and the only man on the session had a tracheotomy. You couldn't write this if you wanted to. And there was a person I met, the only African-American woman in the room, Wanda Graham Harris, a legend for what she was doing, in that county. She said to me, baby, I'm going to teach you everything about racism, and I'm going to teach you everything about poverty. And boy, am I going to teach you how to preach and pray, honey, because you're all in your head. That's what happened the first time I prayed. The first time I preached, she said, ooh, child, what is the matter with you? So I always say it's your fault, Wanda, because I do it now for my whole body. Embodiment. And the things we did. I had 2 little boys by then. Jimmy and Jenny were 4 and 6. And Wanda's family was so wonderful. We would go there, and one time the kids were playing hide and seek, and Chetty leaned into Cameron, her son. She said, boy, Cameron, I wish I was black like you. He said, you do? She said, yeah, because I could play hide and seek and nobody'd ever find me. You know what they did? They picked him up and hugged him. I learned more about authenticity and love, and that's the places where they say, don't tell they're going to hurt you there. Horrific stuff. I learned about love. I learned about racism firsthand, and we were fierce on racism. And then the church didn't know what to do with me again, so I went to Metropolitan Community Church in the city that's predominantly LGBT. I went there, and the thing that happens is they say, you better not go there. They might think you're gay. I said, I am gay. But I went there again, and I fell in love when sexuality and spirituality come together and they become your friends. And so that way, I was able to just be me and to be Janie all the time. And when you want to be Janie all the time, it's like that's when they don't want you. That's what I could never get over, It's when we're the most fun. The thing that I learned at MCC, and I will soon be over this. The thing that I learned was I watched when so many of my friends died of HIV. And we held them in our arms and we loved them over. And a lot of you do that work. And what I saw was, I'll give you two stories. The first was, this is a really named Mr. and Mrs. Smith. They came from Texas. And Gary, their son, who was once this huge barrel guy playing the piano, just incredible in worship and so on. And we just watched him just get tinier, tinier. So we went in to be with him, to pray with him, and we met his mother and dad who had just arrived. And so we went in there, and we prayed with him, we loved on him. And then I remember he put his hand to our lip, and he goes, "Now it's my turn to pray for you." In this tiny voice, this man just prayed for us. What a blessing. And we walked out, and I saw his mother and dad. They were wringing their hands, just wringing their hands. And they said, "Is he saved?" See, there's the word. And I said, "Mr. and Mrs. Smith, not only is he saved, but he is saving us." And that's the truth. Any of us that do this work and walk with people over, there is nothing like it. So by the time I came back to the church, it's like, ask me any of those 8 texts. Ask me any of that stuff. I'm ready for you. Because this is the thing. People describe people as the other, but we're all together. And we all meet in that meeting place, that incredible place where Janie and I met every day. That's what we have a chance to do. So I'll tell you this last story. Rick Weatherly was probably one of the most fantastic preachers I have ever known. And as he was dying of HIV, his partner had just died. And he said, "Janie," he said, "grief work is really important. I'm just going to talk for a long, long time." So we listened in. And at the end, he said, "I know who God is." And I said, "Well, Rick, who's God?" And he said, "I had this dream last night. I saw all these friends of mine, this amazing community, and we were all in a big circle around a bonfire. And as people were speaking, I could see their faces lighted up, all lighted up as they each spoke." He said, "So you know who God is? God's the bonfire who welcomes us all, and we're all in a circle together where everybody's equal." And he said, because every story is sacred. Every story is sacred. That's who God is. So, I've had a chance to live and to cross over with so many people. And I'm so grateful. And I'm so grateful to be here today and to share loving kindness, joy, and peace. Blessed be.
Thank you, Janie, and let's have a round of applause for all of our speakers today. So we're going to close in 5 minutes, but I want to give you 2 minutes just to turn for 2 minutes to someone next to you and just talk about what came up for you today. What's something you take with you? What's something that stirred you, something that challenged you? Just talk to someone next to you for 2 minutes. Okay, dear ones, if we could come back together for our closing word. So as we come to a close, and thank you, Mark. And just a note, please, there's still plenty of food, so take some on the way out or take some to a friend. Again, please join us. If you're not already signed up for our newsletter, please do so. Thanks to all of you for being here with us tonight. Today, sorry, been distracted. Been up very early today. It's already nighttime. I don't even know what time I got up. Yeah. It's time to go to bed now, but thank you for coming. So thank you all for coming today. Thank you for the beautiful speakers, and thank you for living belonging, living justice, continuing to carry forward what has stirred in your heart today to live in our community, to make it more whole, more just, more inclusive, more equitable, more holy. This parting thought. We all belong to each other. A grain of sand belongs to its neighbor. Together, their bond births a beach. Beach and ocean greet each other with waves of laughter, unable to tell where one ends and the other begins. Even night and day put aside their differences and hold hands at dawn and again at dusk. Why not us? Don't we also all belong to each other? Thank you for coming, dear ones. We'll see you soon.